What's up? Steak Frank here. I just got back from Bondi Card Fest in Dallas, where I competed in the One Piece National Championships, and I ended up getting top 64 with blue yellow Nami. I started out 7-1 and just could not get that final win in the last two rounds to make day two, unfortunately. But I want to say I was the highest placing blue yellow Nami, and I spent a lot of time on the deck this format. I think it's really good. And things could obviously gone a little bit better, but I am going to break down this deck for you that I've worked so hard on. So first thing, 3 law blocker. This is pretty common in a lot of Nami lists. It's obviously just a cheap character that can block. To use your leader ability, you need to have 7 or less cards in hand. So being able to just throw that down for very cheap and have the ability to draw an extra card is good. It has great synergy with the 7 cost ST22 Odin, which I'll go over later in this video. And it's a warlord type as well, which is important for some of the choices I made with building this deck. But one of the things I do like about it, I think 1 cost blockers aren't amazing in this format. Obviously it can get rested easily by Bonnie. Zoro can rest it and swing into it for free. Rayleigh can play Mole Pistol to reduce one of your larger rested characters and then KO the blocker. But what I really liked about it is in the green matchup, if they play a 1 cost searcher on their first turn like Bonnie or Hiyori, if you were to play this on your first turn, you can swing into that for free, which is nice. You don't have to waste your leader swing on it, because usually you want to be swinging pretty big with your leader. And then even though Bonnie can leave a Dawn up and rest it, it prevents plays like on your... So if they go first and play a Bonnie, and you respond by playing a Law, they then can't use one of their 3 Dawn to rest the Bonnie and search out another Bonnie and rest it and still have a Dawn up, so you can attack into one of the 2 Bonnies with your Law, which is really nice. And then even against Bonnie, like if you play it down and they choose to rest it and swing into it, most of the time, if they're swinging at my leader for 5 instead of the character, I'm just discarding this with my leader ability to get the counter out of it anyway. So it essentially does the same thing, but kind of prevents them from going too crazy with their searchers. So I like that. And obviously against decks like green purple Luffy, blue purple Luffy, and other things I can't deal with it as well, it's very good to be a cheap blocker. For Nojiko, this is card's insane. You are the only leader that can play it. It only works if your leader's Nami and you're the only Nami leader in format. So general rule of thumb is if you're the only deck that can play a specific card, it's usually pretty good. So I played at 4 copies. It allows you to return a 5 cost character or less to your opponent's hand. And 5 cost characters are just really good in this format. You get rid of Cavendishes or Tashigis, or against Rayleigh, you can get rid of their 4 cost Luffy. You can bounce like 5 cost Nami blockers and blue purple when you're going for the game at the end. So there's just a lot of utility in it, both controlling the field on your mid turns when your opponent has just played a 5 cost, or at the end of the game as well. And then similarly for Zeus, it allows you to draw a life and then KO a 5 cost or less character. This is nice, obviously, if it's like a character like Cavendish or Tashigi that gets benefit from being played again by, utilizing some of the Dawn. It's nice to just get rid of it sometimes, or you can just spot clear a character. And if your opponent didn't take a life that turn when you swung at them, you can use this to activate your leader ability, essentially drawing 2 cards, 1 from your life and 1 from the deck. And obviously every deck needs, a certain amount of 2k counters. So this is just, fortunately for Nami, all of the 2k counters you play in this deck, you can utilize pretty well compared to a lot of other ones. A lot of other decks, 2ks. So we have 2k Hiyori. Again, it allows you to use your leader ability, just draw a card off your life and replace it. And since a card was removed from your life, you get to draw a card. And this will allow you to stack like really good triggers onto your deck. And again, it's just a 2k counter, which you need, so may as well play one that has some utility. So these are all pretty standard cards in Nami, I would say. Most Nami decks will play these. If you're familiar with the deck, it shouldn't be any surprise. But the first card that kind of really differentiates this list is this Onami. So I play 4 Onami. The trigger is very good to stack. It lets you KO a 5 cost or less, which is obviously very good. Like I had mentioned earlier, 5 costs are just really prevalent in the format. And sometimes, you know, even if you don't stack this trigger with Hiyori, you'll just put it into your life at the start of the game and really turn the tide. I won a pretty decisive game against Rayleigh because they had just played down Luffy and then attached Arrested Dawn to their leader and attacked, and I got to immediately KO their Luffy, which is great. But I feel like this card has a ton of utility in the deck because of the banish as well. So the thing about Nami is, and you'll see in a second, is you don't play a lot of like 3, 4, 5 costs. So this like mid-game area, you're not establishing a lot of characters, meaning that you're just attacking really big, like for 6, 7, 8,000 power, which obviously is good because your leader ability, you want your opponent to be drawing their own life, so you can draw a card as well with your leader ability. But a lot of those, like, you know, 4, 5, 6 Dawn turns, it's a little awkward to just swing for like 9, 10. So you'll kind of float like 2 Dawn sometimes. So to just be able to play this down and then, you know, swing 7 or 8 banish is great. Like if you go second, you need to have a Dawn on your leader to use your defensive part of your leader ability. So to spend the rest of those 3 Dawns, just putting 2 and swinging 7 is great. Your opponent, you know, is only going to have 5, 6 cards in hand. So to force them to like not get to draw their life, to either have to banish a life or discard 2 cards out of their 5-card hand is really strong, and I like this card a lot. A lot of people play like the 2-cost Martial Deteach that allows you to give your leader or character 2 Rested Dawn by putting a card on top of your deck. But I really don't love that card because it just stops you from digging deeper in the deck and finding cards that you need. I feel like you don't use it a lot, whereas this I feel like I got a lot of use out of. It synergizes really well with some of the other cards you play, like Odin, which I'll explain. So the last 2K, so we played 10 2Ks. The last one I play is Baby 5. This is kind of like more flexible. You know, I said this was kind of like a flex card, this third law, like this could be an 11th 2K, but also the 2K that you use doesn't have to be Baby 5. Capone Badge is really good. I've played the 0 cost event, the yellow 0 cost event as well. I've tried that out. You could play Kaya even if you wanted, because it synergizes with that Odin card. But I just like Baby 5 personally. Drawing 2 cards is really, really nice because with your leader ability, you know, you can just pitch any card for 2K counter. So doesn't really matter what you draw, you're just adding an extra card to your hand. And you really want to keep your hand healthy around like 6, 7 cards to be able to just defend long enough to get big characters on board. So I really like this. It can really save you a lot of the time. And you play which you'll see in a sec, the 6 cost Bartholomew Kuma, which makes you discard a card, so having a healthy hand is important in this deck. This is kind of a niche one. Zoro, this is the Rush Zoro. If you have less life remaining than your opponent, he gains Rush. I like this card. It kind of serves that same purpose, and I'm kind of playing it over a copy, like a 4th copy of this blocker law. It just allows you to, in the early game, like have something to play. Like I said, you kind of float like 2 or 3 Dawns sometimes when I was talking about the Onami. So just being able to spend that on a character that can immediately attack and kind of put pressure on your opponent and speed up the game is really good. It's also great at dealing with, you know, smaller characters on the board that you don't want to have to attack with your leader. Like you want your opponent to be pressured to draw a life every turn so you can continue to draw with your leader ability. So this, like being able to play this down and just clear an annoying cheap character on the board, like those 1-cost searchers or Zoros, 4-cost character that attaches extra Dawn, or something like a rested Tashigi 3-cost green Tashigi that's like rested. After you try to remove something, you can like slam this down and swing at it. So I like it a lot. It's just one of, it's kind of like a niche utility card, but it did come in handy, and I think it's just it opens a lot of plays for you. 4 Kikinojo. I think this is pretty standard for the Nami deck. It synergizes super well with your Hiyori. If you're at 3 or less life, the trigger just plays it onto the field, and if it were to be KO'd and your opponent's at 3 or less life, you get to add a life. So the thing about this Nami deck is you want to play a lot of characters that really are annoying to remove. You just want to pressure your opponent super hard, make them draw a life every turn so that you can draw cards. And just having characters that are annoying to remove forces them to attack into you, and you're a lot of the time going to be a 7,000 power leader because of your leader ability. So having characters that your opponent doesn't want to swing into is like very important. And obviously, you know, just playing this for super cheap, like being able to pay 2 for the Hiyori, draw a card with the ability, and then just immediately play this for free off your life is really good. And I think these two cards are just, obviously, like, we're meant to go together. They synergize super well. So if you're usually playing one, you're most likely playing the other as well. 4 copies of Pudding. Pudding is one of my favorite cards. It's like one of the only hand disruptions in the game. It keeps a lot of people in check. And I would say I can't think of a better leader that this Pudding synergizes with. Because, like I said, you're swinging like really high amounts in the early game. You're swinging a lot of 7s and 8s. Though your opponent's bound to build up a pretty big hand, and because you don't have a lot of cards to play on your 4, 5, 6 Don turn, this is just a great card to be able to play and disrupt your opponent. The main strategy against Blue Purple Luffy is actually to go first, swing 8 at them, force them to take a life, and then just swing 10 at them and force them in an awkward spot again, and then just putting them on your 7 Don turn and swing another 8 at them. So this card is just very good in this deck specifically, I'd say. So 4 copies, you always want to have access to it. Another niche tech that came in at the last minute was Gadatsu. So this spot, like I said, you don't play a lot of 4 or 5 cost bodies. Like, this isn't a super strong attacker to establish on your field. This isn't, the Kikinojo is not really something you want to just pay for to play out. But there are times, like where on your 5 Don turn or your 6 Don turn, where you want to have the ability to attach a Don and still establish a character. And this just fit in the deck really well. I tried a lot of different things in this spot. I've tried the 5-cost blue Nami blocker that draws 3 trashes too, but I felt like I wasn't getting a lot of utility out of it. The 6-cost Nika Robin that trashes the life if your opponent's at 3 or more life. Jozu is another popular option in this kind of spot, but I just chose to go with Gadatsu the morning of the tournament without practicing it at all, because in theory it makes a lot of sense, and I'll explain that, but it turned out being very, very good, and I would not cut it from the deck. So Gadatsu allows you to deal with a lot of annoying characters. So first of all, it's great at clearing 3-cost green Tashigi. A lot of your green opponents will try to establish the Tashigi so that when their 5 costs like Cavendish come down, you can't remove them with your Nojiko or Zeus. So Gadatsu just immediately allows you to clear it. Against Bonnie, if you go first and they put down a Rouge on their 4 Don turn, you can immediately clear it with Gadatsu. Against Rayleigh, when they play their Luffy on their 4 or 5 Don turn, on your 5 or 6 Don turn, you can immediately clear it with Gadatsu. So it's just a really, really good card for this meta. I think it fit really well in here. A lot of good green opponents, what they'll want to do is go second, and on their 6 Don turn, establish Cavendish for 5, restand so they're at 3, and then immediately play Tashigi so that you can't clear them both in the same turn. But Gadatsu allows you on your 7 Don turn to then play Gadatsu for 5, clear the Tashigi, and then remove the Cavendish with either Zeus or Nojiko. So it just meshed really well in the deck. I thought I got a lot of good use. And then I have the 6-cost Boa. Warlords are important in this deck, and you'll see that at the end of the video. But I like Boa a lot because you want to, in these middle turns, after swinging so big at your opponent, You need to speed up the game. A lot of the time you don't want the game to go super long because like Bonnie's larger character, they just have better top end than you. So you don't want them to establish multiple big bodies like, you know, multiple Shanks or Kid or Mihawk or whatever. And then the more turns that Zoro gets to use their leader ability, the less likely you are to win the game. So the Boa is nice because you can play it for 6 and it has 8,000 power. So it's just the best stat line that you can play for a 6-cost character. And just has, of the 6-cost 8,000 power characters that are available, it just has the best effect. It allows you to just freeze like any big character, and then bottom decking a 1-cost is actually really relevant. You can bottom deck a lot of like greens blockers, and then again, like I was saying, it's really annoying to deal with 1-cost searchers. You really don't want to be swinging into those. You want to be swinging at life to A, speed up the game, and B, you know, get your draw effect. So the Boa just lets you handle those pretty well. Then we have 4 copies of Kuma. Yeah, broken card, discard 1 from hand and add a life. It synergizes really well with your deck because A, to use your leader ability, you need 7 cards in hand, and there's a lot of times where you all have 7 in your hand and your opponent will swing like pretty big at you and you don't want to counter out. So you can take up to 8 and then draw for turn at 9 and then play the Kuma, discard a card, go down to 7 and then get your leader ability, like access to your leader ability. And also like, it's like you don't want to discard the cards in hand, but you also don't want to take the life, but then it adds the life for you. And again, like with the Kikanojo, it's a character that's really annoying for your opponent to KO, because if they do, you get to add a life and survive longer and get to play other big characters. So it synergizes super well in the deck and is just one of the best yellow cards printed, so of course you're playing for. Also has Warlord typing, which again, you'll see why. So I have 2 Kozuki Oden. This is the ST22 card. It prevents itself from being removed, so you can discard 2 cards from hand to prevent any type of removal on this card. If Blue Purple Luffy wants to play 9-cost Mihawk, you can just stop them from doing that, like removing it. And it restands itself for 3 Dawn by bouncing one of your characters to hand. So obviously in the early game, you're playing a lot of, you know, these low-cost characters, your Onami, Hiyori, stuff like that. It also just gets you, you know, 1 or 2k counter back in your hand, which is very good. It just synergizes super well with the deck. And against, you know, decks like Blue Purple Luffy, putting this down and being able to swing huge twice at them is just so strong. So it really helps that matchup a lot. And just overall a very good card. I only have 2 copies because sometimes it's hard to play. It doesn't have an on-play effect, so you're not really getting immediate benefit out of it. And the way that this format is just so fast-paced, you need to kind of like be dealing with whatever your opponent's doing. So just having a free turn to pay 7 Dawn for a card that isn't doing anything immediately, you're not doing that every game, so you don't need as many copies. You also don't want to play multiple of it, whereas like Kuma, you can play 2 or 3 in a game, whereas this, you really only establish 1 and you're good. Just make sure you don't let it get KO'd. So I think 2 copies was fine. And again, you're not playing it every game. There's just certain lines where you're being really aggressive at the opponent and you're not establishing a ton of characters, and your opponent's board, you know, is getting too much to deal with. So then you ignore the board, go super hard at their life, and then play this guy and just ignore everything and go super aggro at them with 2 big swings from Oden. And so those certain games that like shake out that way, he's good to have. So it gives you a lot of like variability in what you're doing. And then I have 8-cost Kid. Again, pretty standard Nami card. This is nice because it always guarantees you to draw a card. There's nothing they can do about it. They just have to trash a life. So it cycles itself, basically draws you a free card, and then at the end of your turn you also get to cycle a card. And when the game is getting late and you need to survive long enough to go for lethal, the cycle, being able to make sure you only have 1 counterless card in your hand to use for the 2k counter, and you draw into your you know, more 2ks and 1ks and the events that you need to survive. This card is really good at doing that. It is a little awkward with the Oden because like the Oden, you need to pay 3 to use its ability, so you can't play a kid and restand Odin in the same turn. You just have to be smart about like how you're utilizing these cards in tandem. That's also why I don't have 4 Odin, because they kind of clash a little bit. Then to the events, I have 2 Slave Arrow, pretty standard Nami card. It returns a character to hand and gives you plus 4k power. Just with your leader ability, you can survive with like a really low hand by the time you get to the end of the game. You know, you're not gonna have a ton of cards left in hand. So like having a 4k event that puts another card in your hand that gives you counter, like, you know, if you're at a super low hand and you have like 1 life left and your opponent tries to swing big at you, you can leader ability, go up to 7, Slave Arrow, go up to 11, and then put a 2k back in your hand and go up to 13. And it just really prevents a lot of opponents from being able to swing lethal even though you don't have a lot of resources left. And again, in a deck that just plays out so many low cost characters, it's really good to have. And then I only play 2 Slave Arrow because I also play 2 Narikarbra Arrow. So this is another 1 cost event. It's mostly a tech for Zoro, but if you have 2 or less life, give one of your opponent's leader or character minus 3,000 power for the turn. So, you know, Zoro's trying to go for game with their restand event, and, you know, they attach all their Dawn and swing at one of your characters. You can Narikarbra Arrow and then make sure your character survives and just like remove their lethal for a turn, right? If they plan on swinging 3 times, that's 9,000 counter power that this 1 card is worth. So it's really good into any type of restand decks. You can use it. I did play a mirror in the tournament, so you can use it in the mirror against Odin. You can use it against, if Bonnie plays the 9 cost Secret Zoro, against Green Purple Luffy, if they, you know, when they put down the 6 cost 7k EVO2 Luffy that restands itself, you can use the arrow. And I just felt like that was a big issue. Like those cards were all causing me, and so this was like a 1 card solution that could deal with it, and I really like it. And then the other secret tech that's really good, and why I play, you know, a certain amount of Warlords, is Perfume Femur. So this is mostly played in Doflamingo, but it gives one of your 7 Warlords of the Sea leader characters plus 2,000 power and prevents your opponent from blocking an attack by that character. And that's really good. I play this, you know, this is the whole deck, so I don't play any like Red Rock or Gravity Blade, because I felt like paying 6 or 7 Dawn to, you know, rewind whatever your opponent did really wasn't progressing the game much for you. You weren't establishing any strong characters like, you know, Boa or Akuma, and you don't want to extend the game for like the reasons that I stated earlier. Most decks in this format, you know, Bonnie, Zoro, Blue Purple Luffy, the more turns that they get, the scarier of a board they're going to have, and the less likely you are to win the game. So you kind of need to end it at a certain point. And I felt like the Red Rock a lot of the time was coming in to get rid of 8 cost Doflamingo, or 8 cost Mihawk, because what Zoro and Bonnie would do is they would, you know, either KO or rest enough of your board and then have like 1 or 2 Mihawks up that you just could not ever get through at the end of the game. They would like kind of wall up and just leave you with not enough attacks to get through the game. So the Perfume Femur tech is great because you can, the turn before you plan on pushing for lethal, you can just play Boa or play Akuma and like stop an attack or add a life to survive, and the next turn just put all your Dawn on it and use Perfume Femur and take the game. And it's really nice because no matter how many blockers they have established, like you can always get them down to 0 with your kids, right? Like if they, you know, decide to wall up with like 2 Mihawk or some smaller blockers, and they have like 1 life left, you can play the 8 cost kid, get them down to 0, play, you know, Boa or Akuma to survive, and then push with Femur at the end. So this is like really clutch game winner. I played against a Purple Luffy. It's really good against their 8 cost Katakuri blocker. It's just a great way to get through a lot of the walls at the end. So I really prefer this over Red Rock. Moving forward, I think this deck is still pretty viable. The new Red Law card that can't be removed is kind of troublesome in like red-green Smoker, and Shanks, I guess. But for the most part, I think the format still stays the same. You have a pretty solid matchup spread. Your Bonnie matchup is tougher. I'd say Zoro's 50-50, and you're pretty favored into Rayleigh and green, blue-purple Luffy, and then green-purple is probably like 50-50 as well. But this deck also just catches a lot of people off guard, so you kind of have an edge in that, and I really like it. I think it's good. And yeah, last thing is, you know, as far as any changes I would make in PRBO2, probably cut these boa for the new yellow 5-cost boa that lets you discard a card from hand and stops one of your opponent's leaders or characters for attacking. Maybe you just cut one of them and an arrow, because like that's just a really good Zoro tech. So you can kind of reduce this card and play 2 of that boa instead. And then you're gonna want to replace these most likely with the new 4-cost Marco blocker that on KO draws you 2 cards. I like that card a lot in here. And I would say maybe you could either make this this is the 4th Marco, and then 2 boa, and then I think this may be like a 3rd slave arrow, and then you'll have your 1 6-cost boa. Something like that. Again, like a lot of these cards are, you can move around, like you can play 1 of the law blocker and 3 Marcos, or you could play 1 law blocker instead of the boa, or you can stick with 2 slave arrow and play the Zoro. A lot of it's kind of movable around, but I think the first thing I'm going to try are those cuts right there. So the 4 Marco blocker, 2 of the 5-cost boa, 3rd slave arrow, and then cut the Nari Carbros. Cool. Thanks for watching the video. I did my best. Cardfest. Sorry I couldn't make top 32 again this year, but yeah, I hope you enjoy the deck and have fun in PRBO2.